He's admitted to a minimum of 4 murders, some of which have gained national attention. And Ms. Manassa, he actually did confess later to that 1984 murder of which he was acquitted. He has admitted to the killing of Maria Marshall in Ocean County, New Jersey. That was a contract killing. He is, and as you mentioned, he admitted less than 10 years ago, he admitted in Caddo District Court involvement in another murder. He is extreme danger to the public. He's an extreme danger to those who have testified against him. He has a history of being a professional criminal and a contract killer.
Case that spans over 3 decades is back in the spotlight. 35 years ago, Deanna Montgomery was murdered. In May of this year, Shreveport police named 2 people responsible for her death. One is her husband, James Montgomery. The other is this man, Larry Thompson Sr., who is already serving an 80-year prison sentence for armed robbery. KSLA News 12 reporter Fred Childers is at the Caddo Parish Courthouse, where Thompson faced a judge for the case that had been cold for 35 years. And Fred, can you tell us what happened in court today?
Larry Thompson Sr. pled not guilty to that charge of second-degree murder. He was also appointed an attorney after he told the Caddo judge that he could not afford one. Now, this is video of Thompson arriving at the Caddo Parish Courthouse just before 1 o'clock today, straight from Angola prison, where he's serving that 80-year sentence. And that sentence is related to an armed robbery. In fact, it's a very high-profile case that played out here in the streets of the Arklatex back in 2003. That's when an armored car heist took place. Everyone saw it, and it deteriorated into a shootout with police. Thompson was said to be the mastermind of the plot to rob the armored car. Thompson, whose crimes have prompted descriptions like the worst of the worst, sat quietly in the courtroom today before Judge Catherine Doro while he was arraigned for his most recent charge of second-degree murder. Thompson has been taken back to Angola to await trial, but no court date has been set. Reporting live in Shreveport, Fred Childers, KSLA News 12.
And you heard right, a professional hitman. They've actually written books about some of his murders. So we're now going to see his parole hearing. I'll unpack it with all the details at the end.
You're classified as a 4th felony offender. You're currently serving an 80-year sentence. You were sentenced in May of 2004 in Bossier Parish for aggravated burglary. And attempted first-degree murder. You received 30 years on the aggravated burglary, 50 years on the attempted murder. You have a sentence in Caddo Parish, which is running concurrent. It's in March of 2016 for manslaughter. You received a 21-year sentence there. So your parole eligibility date is July 21st, 2023. And you have an adjusted good time date, which is October 18 of 2069. Does all that sound correct, Mr. Thompson?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, Mr. Thompson, the first thing we'd like to do is for you, you've been through this process, but we do it a little different now. If you would give the panel, the new panel who didn't see you before, why are you in jail? What led you to jail? And why do you think we ought to grant you parole?
I don't know why we did what we did it, tried to do it. I think the 21 years being incarcerated is enough for the crime I did.
So you've served 21 of your 80 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and as I understand it, you have a detainer with the U.S. Attorney General's office where you owe them 35 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you say you don't know why you did what you did.
I don't know why we did what we just did.
All right, so you've been in jail. Let's see, we established that. You've had limited programs, I see, although you do have some good time credits. Now, why are your programs so limited?
Why I just have one program?
Yes.
Well, I'm not a drug addict. I never was a drug addict. I didn't need no drug counseling. I'm not managing anybody. Don't need no anger management. I took the victim awareness.
What'd you get out of that program?
Well, I just learned that, people be different victims, different circumstances. And why are considered victims? Did before.
So let me, before I go any further, let me ask Warden Dozak for her input.
Well, Larry's been here since 2016. He's only had about 6 write-ups total. The last one began in 2015. He's medium custody. He worked in our maintenance department for about 8 years, but now he works in the recreation department as a quarterly. He has a excellent work evaluation from his supervisor. He is active in a helper group that is one of our disabled stations, and he has several different vocational certificates while he works in maintenance from here and previously. He does have an employment plan as a mechanic, and what his employment plan is, and residence plan with his brother and report. Reading that any disciplinary issue here, he does have medical issues, but it's nothing disciplinary issue.
Okay, good, thank you. So we talked about victim awareness, Mr. Thompson. Through the course of your life, how many victims would you say you have?
And I really couldn't tell you.
And I ask that question because I see in your record, and your record is pretty extensive. It's well over 150 pages at least what was provided to me. There was another murder trial for you in 1984, and I do know that you were acquitted by the prosecution, but that was in New Jersey, but there was some belief that you were really involved in that murder. Then in 2016, the reason you were sentenced in 2016 in, I guess, Caddo Parish, you confessed in 2015 to the murder of someone else in exchange for a reduction in sentence for your son. And then then there was a murder for hire issue. So I'm really concerned about your lack of regard for human life. What would you say to that?
I don't know what to say. I can't answer that.
Okay. Well, let me sit back and listen to my colleagues. Do y'all have any questions? No. Okay. So we'll defer rather to Mr. Richard Ray at the DA's office to hear the position of the DA.
Thank you, Ms. Renassa and members of the board. In 2003, in our local area, there was a armored car heist. Several individuals led by Mr. Thompson stole more than $700,000. They were armed with semi-automatic weapons, ski masks. They robbed an armored car and took the money. They ditched the original car, which was driven by Mr. Thompson. They met up with his son, Larry Thompson Jr. They burned the first vehicle and then fled. There was a Shreveport police officer who picked up the chase of the vehicle and chased it out of Shreveport into Bossier City at speeds exceeding 90 miles an hour. During the chase, Mr. Thompson Sr., Larry Thompson, instructed one of the younger members of the gang to, and this was in the court proceedings, to shoot the MFer, meaning the police officer. And several rounds were fired into Officer Mark Charbonneau's vehicle. I think 5 rounds. Thankfully, one ricocheted off the steering column. It was headed for his chest, but it ricocheted off the steering column and hit him in his arm. But he was unable to continue the pursuit. The pursuit continued into Bossier City, where Mr. Thompson and other members of the gang terrorized local residents, and it was a very large and very violent ordeal, and it was led by Larry Thompson Sr. He was clearly the leader of the gang of much younger criminals, including his son. In fact, in the court proceedings, it's in the record that when he was questioned by police, he was caught later that day. All of them were. But when he was questioned, he told police, "My son wouldn't be here today if I didn't ask him to be," meaning involved in the armored car heist and the shooting of a police officer. Mr. Thompson Sr. said, "He's not a bad person like I am," meaning himself. This officer was shot. Thankfully, he did survive, but he received serious injuries, and the matter was prosecuted in Bossier Parish in 2004, and he was convicted by a jury of his peers of, as was mentioned, aggravated burglary and attempted first-degree murder in the shooting of the police officer. But what's notable, I didn't hear Mr. Thompson express any remorse for any of his crimes, but what is notable that Mr. Thompson has admitted to in either court proceedings or media accounts, he's admitted to a minimum of 4 murders, some of which have gained national attention. And Ms. Manassa, he actually did confess later to that 1984 murder of which he was acquitted. He has admitted to the killing of Maria Marshall in Ocean County, New Jersey. That was a contract killing. He is, and as you mentioned, he admitted less than 10 years ago, he admitted in Caddo District Court involvement in another murder. He is extreme danger to the public. He's an extreme danger to those who have testified against him. He has a history of being a professional criminal and a contract killer, and he has a history of violent crimes. And not only that, but he has a tendency and a history of leading others, younger offenders, including his son, into this type of violent behavior and behavior that is creates an extreme danger to the public. He's admitted to killing Maria Marshall in Ocean County, New Jersey, Deanna Montgomery in Caddo Parish, Larry Wayne Lester in DeSoto Parish in 1988, and he's also admitted to the murder of Chester Underwood in Marshall, Texas. These occurred during the late 70s and into the 80s. Those are the crimes that he's admitted to. He is an extreme danger to the public, and based on his history and the things that he's admitted to, my district attorney, Skylar Marvin, of the 26th JDC, Bossier Webster Parish, would ask that his parole be denied and that he continue to serve his sentence.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for your input and for providing that information. Mr. Thompson, I think that the people are prepared to vote now. There's no other questions, no other testimony. So I'll be voting first because your case was assigned to me. Mr. Thompson, you just seem to be doing okay where you're at. I have the same concern as Mr. Ray expressed based on what I viewed in your record. I do believe you're a public safety risk. I believe you're doing well in the environment that you're in. But my vote today, based on the opposition that's been expressed today and the risk to the public safety, my vote today is to deny your parole. Mr. Tillis,
I concur with.
Ms. Ledoux.
My vote is to deny. I don't think I've read a more concerning report in all the years that I've done this.
Mr. Freeman,
I concur.
Mr. Barra.
I concur for the same reason.
All right, Mr. Thompson, you've received a unanimous vote today to deny your parole. All right,
Not every day you get to see a notorious serial killer, mafioso, hitman. I don't know if he's mafioso, but have a parole hearing. Pretty crazy, right? And what's wild, it's like you see the pictures of him when he got, really what got him busted was doing a crazy armored car heist in broad daylight. And at the age he was at, it's just like, it's like out of a Hollywood movie thing. I mean, what you get away with all these murders all your life. They took him to trial for being that hitman. We'll go over it. And then at the age of like 60 something, you decide to rob an armored car. And that's what gets you busted. And then when he gets what, would have been considered a life sentence, I guess, he confesses to all these crimes. Then he comes up for this parole hearing, and I think one just has to assume that, I mean, here's the thing. He has a federal detainer. He's never going to be free again for the rest of his life. It's just not going to happen. So I'm just wondering if, and one has to assume that he's probably comfortable in Louisiana. He has his base, he has his cell, he has, maybe the respect from it's home to him, right? Who wants to get up and move to a federal prison, which I would assume he might have no idea where he'll end up and what his arrangements will be. So I can't imagine he actually would even want parole, expect to get parole. So is he there just for fun of it? Is he bored? I don't know, but he didn't even try hard. Maybe you give him credit for just being the stone cold killer sociopath that he is. I mean, he didn't try to manipulate. He just like, I don't know. I got parole. I'm just like, it's interesting. I mean, this is the type of stuff that you might think can help someone with getting their PhD one day. Or, this could be in like the FBI file. This is interesting stuff to see how the mind of a stone cold killer might work. I feel like this is an historic parole hearing in some ways. So thank you, Sir Richard, for sharing that. The idea that he even has a chance of parole, it's just crazy. So there's this was a best-selling author wrote a book on that. I don't know how well the book did, but it was a best-selling author that wrote the book on this. So man confesses to being a hitman hired by husband to kill his wife 30 years ago in cold case, which inspired the best-selling book and TV series Blind Faith. I wonder how many of you have seen this TV series or read this book. Larry Thompson was known in law enforcement circles as a contract killer. He was acquitted of the 1984 murder of Maria Marshall in New Jersey. This week, Thompson admitted that he had been the triggerman in Marshall's murder, which was set up by her husband, who was found guilty of her murder and sentenced to death. Wow. Authorities suspect Thompson could be involved in dozens of other cold case murders. In addition to his confession, Thompson has been indicted in the 1979 death of Deanna Montgomery. Thompson is currently serving a 50-plus year sentence for his botched armed robbery. And again, someone who got away with all of these murders as a professional hitman, you just might, it's like, what? Here's the book. Makes you wonder what made him do such a crazy case. Crazy thing of trying to Okay, so let's continue. This is interesting. Okay, an alleged longtime hitman already serving what essentially is a life sentence in a Louisiana prison now claims that he was the triggerman in an infamous 1984 murder that was the basis of a 1989 true crime novel, Blind Faith, a murder for which he already had been tried and found not guilty. But that's just the tip of the alleged iceberg. For 71-year-old Thompson Sr., he has also been indicted for the 1979 murder of Deanna Montgomery, of Shreveport, and indictments also are expected in the murder of the two other people in two other jurisdictions, one also in Louisiana, one in Texas. Montgomery's husband, Jim, a longtime friend of Thompson, was also indicted this week in the murder of his wife and charged with second-degree murder. Longtime friend of Thompson was also indicted. Wow. Okay. They really didn't like wives. Thompson's current prison sentence is for crimes unrelated for the three murders, and because he's already found not guilty of murdering New Jersey socialite Maria Marshall, he can't be tried again for her murder. Marshall was found shot to death on the side of the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, September 1984. Despite being identified during his trial as the triggerman, Thompson was found not guilty of the murder. Juries always get it right, right? Marshall's husband, Robert Marshall, however, was found guilty of arranging the murder of his wife and was sentenced to the ultimate punishment. Although that sentence was overturned in 2004 and he's resentenced to 30 years to life in prison, he remains in a New Jersey prison. You know, of course, the death sentence, they're always overturned. Not always. We've had a few recently. But 30 years to life. What causes someone to do so? They're so like, it's like, just get divorced, lose money over it. Really? You want to risk spending the rest of your life in a prison cell? Things I can never understand. Thompson's confession to the murder comes as investigators have started to take a fresh look at a handful of different unsolved homicides in multiple states. The two other unsolved murders in which authorities suspect Thompson are those of Larry Wayne Lester in DeSoto Parish, Louisiana in 1988, and the 1979 murder of Chester Underwood in Harrison County, Texas. Oh, that's interesting. That's Maria Marshall on the left. Authorities are being rather tight-lipped about their overlapping investigations, but law enforcement officials think time is beginning to catch up with the confessed killers who are beginning to come clean about the murders long been suspected of committing. Larry was a notorious criminal. He was feared. Nobody ever testified against Larry Thompson. Robert Davidson, a retired DeSoto Parish Sheriff Lieutenant who continues to work on area cold cases. Testifying against Larry Thompson was like testifying against the drug cartel. Authorities believe Thompson could be tied to several other murders and hope that now that he's behind bars, witnesses who have previously been scared to testify against longtime criminal may start coming forward, or maybe he will, I don't know, just for the attention, boredom, confess to them. Why not? It is. And there are so many articles Sir Richard found, so many. I'm a little curious. Let's continue on because I'm actually curious. This is interesting. I think this is interesting, right? So, Louisiana man admits to role in notorious 80s Garden State killing. So, the man who fired a .45 caliber automatic pistol that killed Maria Marshall in Orange County, most notorious murder case, has confessed his guilt almost 30 years later. Larry N. Thompson, 71, incarcerated in Angola for his part in the unrelated armed car robbery and the attempted murder of a Shreveport police officer, has told Louisiana and New Jersey law enforcement officials that he was the shooter 28 years after a jury found him not guilty. Now languishing behind bars in the 12th year of a more than 50-year sentence for his crime in Louisiana. Thompson confessed 1 month ago that Ocean County Prosecutor Office had in fact gotten it right in January 1985 when they charged him as a murderer. Under the double jeopardy rule of the United States Constitution, no one can be tried twice for the same crime after a verdict and not guilty is rendered. As a result, he cannot be prosecuted. Again, defense witness who deliberately lied on Thompson's behalf also cannot be charged for the statute of limitations of perjury. Yeah, I guess it wasn't fair for me to say that and just to the jury, right? They probably did. They probably followed the rules of the law. It's about unreasonable doubt, and they reasonable doubt, and they probably had a lot of reasonable doubt. So, anyways, Thompson's behalf also cannot be charged in New Jersey is 5 years, and Ocean County prosecutor. Okay. Though there are no legal avenues we can pursue at this time because our laws preclude further prosecution of substantial time has lapsed since the event occurred, we felt it was important to publicize these developments so that family and friends of Maria could have some degree of closure in this tragic event. Yes, I did. Thompson made his admission in a face-to-face interview with James A. Churchill, retired chief of the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office in the mid-1980s. Churchill was the lieutenant in charge of agency's major crime unit. It was Churchill. I love that name, Churchill. I mean, I've never heard of a Churchill other than Winston Churchill, who supervised the investigation of the Marshall murder, and it was he who sought to bring Thompson to justice. Churchill said Thompson was neither boastful nor remorseful for the murder, just straightforward and unemotional, which is exactly how we saw him today. He answered simply, "Yes, I did," to the question as to whether he fired the gunshots that killed Marshall. Moreover, Thompson admitted that he was aware the witness testifying on his behalf were lying when they supplied him with an alibi that convinced the jury there was reasonable doubt as to whether he was the killer. The murder was the most notorious in Ocean County history and was subject to the best-selling 1989 book Blind Faith. So it was a best-selling book. Any of you looking to buy it? Blind Faith by author Joe McInnes, which in 1990 was adopted into an NBC made-for-TV movie of the same name starring Robert Urich and Joanna Kearns. How many of you have watched it? If you have, let me know in the comment section. Marshall, 42, a wife and mother of 3 boys, was shot twice at close range in the back during a staged robbery at what was then a picnic area on a forested media strip in Garden State Parkway. Her husband, Robert O. Marshall, a once prominent and respected Toms River insurance broker, had orchestrated the elaborate murder-for-hire plot in order to collect a $1.5 million life insurance policy payout on his deceased wife and be free to legitimize an extramarital affair. Oh, like that's not original. While returning home from a night out at Harris Casino in Atlantic City on September 7, 1984, Marshall stopped at the picnic area after Robert Marshall pretended there was a problem with the right rear tire of their 1980 Cadillac Eldorado. To make the crime look like a robbery, Robert Marshall had himself struck on the head and knocked unconscious as he was ostensibly checking the tire. Okay, so he had himself knocked unconscious. The tire itself was slashed at the scene to appear as if the vehicle had been sabotaged in Atlantic City by robbers who planned to follow the couple home until a flat tire forced them to pull over in a remote location. Web of lies. It took 3 months for investigators in the prosecutor's office to unravel the web of deceit that Robert Marshall had spun. He is convicted of capital murder on March 5th, 1986. After 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury sentenced him to death. However, the same jury acquitted Thompson. Another man served in a short jail sentence in exchange for testifying for the state, and a third man was sentenced to life term for connecting Marshall to the murder-for-hire group, all of whom hailed from Louisiana. New Jersey has since eliminated the death penalty, and Robert Marshall will be eligible for parole for the first time this December, according to the prosecutor's office. And when was this article written? May 6, 2014. Gosh, I'm going to do a quick Google search. Robert Marshall New Jersey prison. Oh, he died. There's a Wikipedia page. Robert Oakley Marshall was an American businessman charged with and later convicted of contract killing of his wife Maria. The case attracted attention to the true crime author who was best-selling. Yeah, he died. Original sentence to death in 2006. He was resentenced to life, and with the March 2015 parole hearing pending, Marshall died. So he died before he even got his parole, right before his freedom was within his grasp, at the age of 75, which is still young. All because he wanted an affair. He wanted insurance money. Hope it was worth it for you, sir. Hope it was worth it for you. I mean, obviously it wasn't worth it. But, okay. This past October, Churchill was invited to Shreveport to assist in a homicide investigation in Cato Parish, Louisiana, county called a parish, and a cold case investigation in 1979 in which a woman had been murdered with eerie similarities. And Marshall gets 5 years later. Thompson was their suspect. On April 25th, Churchill interviewed Thompson in the presence of local district attorney in his investigation to Louisiana and State Penitentiary. Thompson admitted to Churchill that he was in New Jersey on September 6, 1984 to September 8, 1984, and that it was he who fired the shots that took her life. Churchill said Thompson did not implicate Marshall in the murder. However, Churchill said Thompson was in no position to do so because until the two men were seated together at the defense table in Superior Court, they had never met or spoken. The scheme involved two middlemen. Al Delafave, a spokesman for the prosecutor's office, said the jury in 1986 had reached a not guilty verdict based on a seemingly airtight alibi that placed Thompson in a dentist office in Louisiana with his teenage son, Brian Thompson, on the later date, probably the same son that he confessed to give his son a lower sentence. While his son had testified at his father's trial that this was true, he signed an affidavit last month now asserting that it was his mother who had been with him at the dentist's office that day. A receipt given to his mother, Wanda, by the dental assistant was made out to her husband. The elderly Thompson said his alibi was planned during the time he was in jail in New Jersey awaiting the trial. Thompson stated his alibi witness, which included his wife and brother, were either lying or were mistaken when they testified on his behalf. After the verdict, Thompson returned to Louisiana, where he became involved in other criminal activity. On Thursday, Churchill telephoned the middle son of Marshall to inform him that his mother's killer had admitted guilt and that the news was to be public the next day. Churchill said Chris Marshall expressed appreciation for the phone call and that there was some closure in the confession. I know this is closure for you guys too, he told Churchill. I think it is closure, Churchill said. And there's many more articles. And thank you, Sir Richard, for providing all of it. This stuff is one thing you read about it, you see it in the movies, you hear about these assassins, these killers, and then you can actually see them in the parole hearing with no personality, with nothing there. And as Ms. Ledoux said, one of the worst, or maybe the worst case she's ever seen. And you just to think that if he was in Iowa, he probably, no DA shows up there, he probably gets paroled. Pretty wild stuff. And this DA did a good job. I wish he would show up to more cases. The first time we see him, it takes a serial killer, a professional hitman, to get him up from wherever it is he came. But he did a good job. And what I have to tell you, Richard Ray, ADA, is that we would appreciate it if you made more appearances more often. And with that, I'll let you go.
So he's admitted to a minimum of 4 murders, some of which have gained national attention. And Ms. Manassa, he actually did confess later to that 1984 murder of which he was acquitted. He has admitted to the killing of Maria Marshall in Ocean County, New Jersey. That was a contract killing. He is, and as you mentioned, he admitted less than 10 years ago, he admitted in Caddo District Court involvement in another murder. He is extreme danger to the public. He's an extreme danger to those who have testified against him. He has a history of being a professional criminal and a contract killer.